Let's start off with the usual bullshit talk of why I am the single most important person you should listen to, along with my personal opinions on Quake Champions, like every other opinion video out there, and give you 30 minutes background on my entire 25-year history and experience playing first-person shooters from id Software. Okay, that was actually a sarcastic joke. I wasn't trying to diss any content creators, and being a veteran does indeed give you a more justified, in a way, subjective opinion. The key word here, however, is subjective. And that is what it comes down to, and that is what I am doing myself. There is no reason why you should take my word over his word or her word or someone else. It's all subjective, guys, and that's the beauty of life. Different tastes, different opinions, making for a much larger variety of target markets out there. Now, I'm gonna be a hypocrite a little, and actually, will give you a quick backstory rundown. I'm gonna keep it short though. First FPS game I got my hands on and actually was old enough to understand what I was doing was Doom 2. Then, before Quake landed, I was all over titles such as, again, Doom 2, Wolfenstein 3D, Heretic, or was it Hexen? Or was it both? Rise of the Triads, and etc. and on the list goes. Quake landed, blew my mind, made me a fanboy. Let's be honest now. I'm a fanboy when it comes to id Software, whether I like to admit it or not. And I kinda don't, because fanboy behavior can, not always, but it can lead to very biased and mindless behavior. But hey, I try to keep an open mind, have experience as a gamer from many genres, and even titles or companies that actual mindless fanboys would consider treason to love and play, like Unreal Tournament. And what you love is what you love in the end. I am a sucker for all things id Software. Ever since Quake, I never stopped playing, loving and indulging in their games, even after several company changes with regards to personnel and whatnot, including Romero leaving. I even liked, no, loved actually, their new IP, Rage, and despite some of its rather console port personalities, it still provided for some of the best and solid first-person shooter gameplay I had enjoyed for a while. I even liked Doom 3, I did. It was nothing like the originals, sure, but for its own thing, I still loved it and rank it as my second scariest title personally. Alien Isolation took the first spot rather recently actually. So because of this, some of you might think I am biased. Whatever. Being a veteran gamer in all things id Software and first-person shooters, I too have formed a solid opinion on what I do and do not like in the arena FPS genre. And as subjective as it may be, here is my opinion. Clearly, as you see in the title of the video, I think Quake Champions is better than Quake 3, and here is the rundown as to why. Number 1. Champion selections. They are a trend, sure, and all the rave is about hero selections and whatnot in games today, something which modders have actually made a very strong push into the mindset of modern gamers. Champion selections in Quake Champions do not take away from the player skill involved with the game. As another veteran and content creator themselves very nicely put it, your little skills won't save you against a 20-year-old veteran player, and they won't. Skills in Quake Champions only add to the gameplay, with formulating strategies on how you approach certain matchups and what to look for, adding a whole new layer of gameplay to the franchise that was never present before. Just look at it simply as more weapon choices and pickups. That is how people should think of it, I reckon. When you know the enemy has a rocket launcher on them, you approach them differently. When you know they have a railgun, again, you change your approach. If you know they have a mega health or heavy armor, again, you switch strategy, perhaps even trying to delay some so that armor and health can chip away without needing to confront the enemy. Same thing goes with skills. It's like knowing the enemy has a certain weapon or pickup on them, one that surely only their character selection can have access to, hence you always know what this pickup or weapon is. Changing again your strategy of how you approach them with the tools in hand, including your own skills. As opposed to weapons that are constant and a little bit of map control, and pickups that are based on map control and decrease over time, skills are single burst tools with cooldowns on them. Unlike weapons that bring a constant change to your approach, and pickups that bring time-based and map control changes to your game, skills bring in plays to bait the enemy into using them, and strategies to counter those, along with rushdown gameplay once you know, depending on the situation, that the enemy has used their skill. Even more so, you bring in some minor map control yet again, with trying to pick up the time dials to decrease the cooldown of your skills. Player skill is not taken out of the game, as a matter of fact, more of it is added. So instead of, as some of you do straight up without testing the game out, call champion selections dumbing down, See if you can approach it in this manner and see if it does not increase the player skill needed in both calculation and forming better on-the-fly strategy. The skills are also kept to a minimum with small bursts here and there and large cooldowns, adding to the playstyle of the game rather than becoming the primary focus of it. As I mentioned before, this is the primary reason why a veteran or any skilled player will still take you down no matter what you do if they are better. There is no get out of jail for free card. Even the better escape tools like Nyx going stealth can be countered the higher the skill of the opponent, and are further balanced out with making Nyx herself a rather squishy character. One way or another, if a more skilled player catches you again whilst your skill is on a cooldown, they have all the advantage of putting you to sleep right there and then. A smaller hitbox for Nyx further balances this back out again, not making it ridiculously easy to kill said champion when their skill is not available. Which brings me to the next point, number 2, better balancing. Aside from champion balancing itself, on which it seems they have already done a great job so far for the most part, with even such subtleties like Nyx not being able to pick up things when in ghost form, the game feels a little more balanced overall. I could be wrong, and further testing might prove that said elements that I'm about to go into might be the same as Quake 3 or Quake Live in the long run rather than necessarily better. The first thing I noticed was the mega health. Before, it was a standard 200 max health for all players. Now, there is a form of either squishy or tanky results maintained depending on the champion used. The maximum is still 200 health, but for the tanks of the game, the maximum health for all champions that you can have beyond your normal health cap is plus 50 instead of plus 100. This has made the whole dominance of map control, well, less dominant, while at the same time still keeping it quite important. New cooldowns, like 30 seconds for both a heavy armor and a mega health pickup, and other small differences here or there, have really better balanced certain areas out as well. These cooldowns, for example, result in not being able to be at the same place at the same time for the pickups. And from what I saw, at least on Blood Covenant, the distance from mega health to heavy armor is around about the 30-second mark, 15 to and 15 back, with some basic strafe jumping. Normal players will take a little longer, veterans will get there significantly faster. Be that as it may, the respawn time becomes, if one dominates both pickups, dependent on how long it took said player to go from point A to point B, making a smaller window and allowing the second player to at least push in with a small delay and again, at the very least, deny the pickup. Even a weapon loadout at the beginning has been sort of added, kind of. You have a selection from 3 starter weapons, which are weaker versions of the heavy machine gun, super shotgun and the super nail gun. Naturally, they are simply the machine gun, shotgun and nail gun. Not really of a great importance other than giving the ability to a starter weapon style more suitable to a player. What this however changes is the use of the heavy machine gun, which has now been upgraded to actually be a proper weapon in the game aside from just the useless starter weapon. There are evident changes along with subtle ones that make the game in all feel more balanced. At least for my liking, it feels a lot more balanced. I don't rather agree, however, with increased damage on scoped view for the heavy machine gun and the railgun. As a matter of fact, if it were up to me, I'd do it the other way around, making less damage in scoped view. But anyway, I'll get used to that as well and adapt. It's probably as a means to force the use of those weapons more as long-range weapons rather than all-around use, which in the end makes sense and brings further balancing and also the notion of switching weapons even more to the forefront, whilst a lot of newcomers for the most part are not aware of how much weapon switching is a main priority in Quake. Number 3. Modern visuals. This one's an easy one. Obviously the game needed a makeover badly. It has been using the same engine and visuals for almost 2 decades now. 18 years is it? Again, these are all subjective opinions, and I am clearly speaking on my part here. I have been wanting improved visuals on Quake 3 for so long, I actually thought of making a fan-made version of the original Quake 3, using the same engine and just buffing visual aspects to it just to greatly increase texture and motor complexity rather than add any modern effects or anything like that. In the end, I scrapped that after starting to work on it, figuring I could make something altogether more fitting to my liking, and even went into making my own title. Unfortunately, I scrapped that too since it was in development with 0 budget and support, thus getting developed at a really slow pace for starters. And 2, a year later, Quake Champions was announced, which, well, it was along the lines of what I was planning anyway. But clearly better, especially on the visual side of things. Having the id Software themselves, and Saberwolf, work on it with a proper team and budget on it, it made my project pointless. I actually have a real simple pre-alpha trailer for that game on my channel right here, as early as the content for it was. Who knows, might pick it up again someday for a single player adventure or something. Number 4. Game modes, including a very interesting and new team-based competitive mode. I like it. A lot. Better than any old game mode on its own, really. I don't know what the fuss is about as per some opinions out there. He blends 3 game types into one pretty much. Capture the flag, domination, and a third rock ball kind of game mode, or whatever it was called in Unreal Tournament. You know, the one you would pick up a ball and pass it around and try to get it to the finish line. You run to the soul, like capture the flag, or that rock ball thingy, pick it up, which works like a ball that you can pass around, and get it to one of the 2 obelisks of your choice. Upon doing so, you need to defend the obelisk, until the soul has given you enough power as it counts up, so the soul/obelisk can be sacrificed for a single point. It's actually more like that rocket ball thingy crossed with domination for this part. You fend off the enemy whilst doing this, who are trying to take the soul from the obelisk, and rush it back to the obelisk to do the same, and rinse and repeat. This is more the capture the flag element to it all. Sure, some people feel that the pace is a little slower than a capture the flag game mode, since you have to wait around at the obelisk, but I find it's just fine. I like domination, and trying to force your way into the defended area or keep the enemy out is as much of a form of great play as any. The mode gives a little of everything, in a balanced manner that you can formulate different strategies depending on the situation, which may constantly change, keeping the interest of the match always high. I really see myself having a lot of fun with this game mode. It's also a great mode for newcomers, since players of lower skill in certain areas can be compensated by other teammates, as long as they know the objective of the mode so they can help towards it, rather than think it's just another team deathmatch. I, for example, have really poor ping times, so my aim is mediocre at best, but I have managed plenty of times to sneak in and get the soul in plenty games and even run it all the way back to our own obelisk, while the rest of the players with better aim are wreaking havoc on each other trying to make time for me. It is arguable if this is a point to use as a reason why Quake Champions is better than Quake 3 or Quake Live, but I use it anyway since I personally feel it is a better and modern take, more aligned with today's tastes and playstyles that is much more fitting for a main esports team mode. Other than that, sure, Quake 3 and Quake Live are better overall in terms of modes, since they have a much larger range of game modes to choose from. Some of those, however, I feel will be added to Quake Champions. Not all, but some. You didn't hear it from me, but I think Capture the Flag is making its way here, as well as a mode called Defense. Anywho, that could be bullshit, but the in-game mode selection indicates that there is at least one more mode coming, if not more. So, being a beta, I find it a little harsh to judge it on the size of its game modes right now, as opposed to the quality. Duel has been much improved in my opinion as well, even as a spectator mode. After seeing a fair few pro duels out there, I can say I'm having a lot more fun with this style of 3 champion selections versus 3. Generally, I feel the matches are much more balanced, and well, fun. The added notion of skills and how each champion approaches another champion adds so much more depth to each match. It becomes more of a calculating mode rather than who gets the most frags and better map domination sooner kind of a situation. And is easier to follow, I believe, which is again a good thing for large audiences. Very good thing actually. Sure, I will miss that whole wait in a single room thing with other players for your turn in duel mode and whatnot, but in all honesty, I will miss it for nostalgia reasons more than anything. Memories are memories at this point, and just giving us the same remake won't reproduce those memories, which really can't be surpassed sometimes. It's all about making new memories from here on out. In this new duel format, newcomers do not get to feel intimidated by other players spectating their path to learning the game, which I find nothing wrong with, but anyhow, some people simply don't feel comfortable with it, and I get it. And more importantly, you don't wait. With this new game mode, you are fighting. Judgment call, I guess, on this one. There are goods and bads in both ways, but I tend to lean slightly over to the new duel style. Lastly, although the game is now rather lacking in large game mode selections, it also is important in my opinion that the game modes played are more concerned with quality rather than quantity. Less is more, for 2 reasons. 1. Again, newcomers. Overwhelming them with 10 different modes that they have either no idea which one they like or which one is the prominent esports mode, much less asking for them to learn each and every one, can backfire. Along with 2, splitting the player base into too many modes, thus increasing matchmaking times and screwing with the flow of the game altogether. A problem we have seen with a lot of games so far that have tried to make so and so many modes to choose from, and these are things that we can do without. Even as an old player, it gets annoying with so many options for me, to be honest. Custom matches, however, would be great to allow for more unique modes, like Rocket Arena, and so much more. Number 5. In all this, the soul of Quake is kept intact, which obviously is very important. From the world design and world building itself, giving some of the best renditions of Quake worlds we have ever seen period, to of course the mechanics. Everything feels intact. The rocket launcher feels perfect, the railgun feels perfect, the machine gun, the nail gun, lightning gun, tri-bolt, all they're new. It all has the Quake feel to it. I know some are complaining about the rocket animation having a delay. I remember the same for Quake Live though. And in all honesty, aside from network issues that need to be ironed out and rockets completely not registering at all, everything else feels every bit like Quake 3 as anything. With that said, rocket jumping works just the same way, strafe jumping works just the same way as the circle jumping, the speed feels the same, actually it is the same, and basically it's the same game overall, which is very important as the speed, movement and other mechanics are the core of the gameplay and it's all intact. Very demanding for today's graphics as well and server speeds, being such a fast game, requiring for, again like I already stated, the network code to be slightly improved. But we are in the right direction and it is after all still a beta. Sure, in terms of visuals I would like the direction of the game, having started from Quake 1 as we have been informed, to head over to the more sci-fi maps and future gothic maps as well that we saw in Quake 3, like the Longest Yard for example, or Temple of Retribution, which were alongside Campgrounds my favorite maps in the game. But as a start, it is great, especially since there has been a large request for a Quake reboot period, and giving us more nightmare realms for now with runes inscribed on stone pillars and bloody pools and elder gods and whatnot is a great start to map building of Quake champions already. Number 6. New movement mechanics for all skills and an easier entry title for newcomers. Aside from keeping the old mechanics intact, there are some much needed additions to the game that really make it so much more diverse and fun. More importantly, there are welcoming additions that blend the skill gaps in movement more than anything else. To balance this out, each champion is, like I stated already before, with different maximum health and armor counts, initial movement speeds and hitbox sizes. These additions do not give an advantage to a certain champion, they only make certain playstyles available and certain maneuvers more accessible. The defining characteristic behind each confrontation continues to be nothing else other than player skill. Things such as Nyx's passive for wall jumping. I'm not good at circle jumping. Heck, I can barely keep my strafe jumps in check, but at least I know I can for the most part do those 70% of the time and get better at them. Still have a hard time aiming through the map with strafe jumping, and that is the beauty of it all. There is a skill and learning curve needed which allows you to set goals and actually see yourself improve. The payoff is more than worth it in the end. After managing myself some great matches once in a while, it just feels so damn good being able to pull off a certain maneuver you have been trying hard for a while, and even more so, to have it help you in combat. But as I was saying, I myself have a long way to go to learn proper, consistent and useful strafe jumping, let alone circle jumping and whatnot. Nyx to the rescue with her wall jump, making certain hard to reach areas that pro players would otherwise simply circle jump to, accessible to me as well. And why does this not ruin player skill? Because this simply allows a lower tier player to perform a certain movement as well, which definitely is not enough to give a win over a pro player. A pro player has been playing against such movement all along anyway. It simply reduces the skill gap slightly in one area, but makes up for it elsewhere. Meanwhile, a wall jump needs to be done on a wall. A circle jump can be done at will. Adding the fact that giving you an extra tool to make movement easier for you means you are balanced out to die easier with a maximum of 75 health, and the skill gap is set back to what it was overall. It simply makes your attempts as a newcomer much more fun, being able to do something at least before getting owned that doesn't become as frustrating. Sure, you will still lose, but you will feel you put up a good fight, at least in your head, or at least you tried and done some cool jumps and shit. Then there are other movement types to cater to new styles as well, like Clutch's dash and his forward momentum gain, Ranger's low self-damage for rocket jump players, Visor, which is a straight up Quake 3 champion, having almost no limitation to his momentum gain with strafe jumping, Soar lag and her bunny hopping, etc. The strafe jump speed caps are also great and can be bypassed by other means, like propelling yourself with rockets. Can you imagine Nyx with no speed cap from strafe jumping, with her wall jumps as well, or Anarchy who can turn in midair? Talk about overkill. What's more important about this is that all these different movements allow for different pro playstyles as well. Some people simply might not be able to wrap their head around strafe jumping, it just doesn't fit for whatever reason to them. And instead of making the game a title straight up not made for them, and a matter of who can dominate in strafe jumping as well as everything else, the player skill versus player skill focus is brought back to good reads, perfect aim, fast reflexes, and good calculations in the field from player skill usage to map control and pickups. And for the last time, any movement help given to a certain champion is balanced back out through tweaking their initial stats, speeds, and hitbox sizes, thus, again, leveling them out. Number 7. No pick maps, no force player models, no bright models, no visual aids, no nothing. For the most part. Now this point is heavily subjective. Many like it one way, others like it another. Now, before going into the usual your style is not hardcore, now your style is not hardcore or prayer gameplay, let's approach this the way it really should be approached, that being subjective opinions, which is what they are, people. That is all they are. I mean, visual aids all started out as an exploitation against casual or other players that didn't know how to use the console to change their graphics and never cared or bothered with it, as a way to get an advantage over the enemy. I call this cheating. Some disagree. But cheating is primarily making something easier, and whichever way we look at this, making the enemy more visible, obviously, makes it easier to spot them. You're taking away from a certain player skill in fact when doing this, that being learning to spot the enemy on your own within the given world created. It was even worse after the fact, because even when everybody was doing it and was using these visual aids, you never really knew how much your visual aids are helping you and how much of a visual advantage the opponent had over you, making it a pimp my ride situation rather than just player skill. And what feels comfortable to you might not be giving you the edge you need, and you simply wouldn't even know it. I am all for a level playing field when it comes to visibility, and any change that you make that will actually give you an advantage of how clearly you can see me, I consider it to be a non-level playing field. Champions has a middle ground really, as an arrow pops over the enemy when they are in your line of sight, making it already for me really easy to spot the enemy out even if I wouldn't have otherwise, but at the same time not making it too easy with also giving you a clear shot of where to aim, hence a compromise. And from what I gather, more visibility options will be added in the future. The drop down is already there for it, so I hope these are not too much leaning on the hold my hand side of things and only there to help with spotting an enemy rather than also aiming at them. In time, this mentality became the norm, and those of us that did not agree simply had to live with it. After everyone was on board, surely it wasn't seen as cheating, and it wasn't because everyone had access to forums and communities to help with this. Back in the day, forums were hardly as popular as they are today, and trust me, a large number of players never even knew about these console options and were put off by them in the long run, either by getting owned or because they had to sit there and tweak too much before having the ability of enjoying the game. This also created a rift. The game aesthetically became dull and simple, generic too actually, and this discouraged newcomers even more, whilst it annoyed old-timers like me that liked our graphics even more, as I refused to play this way and had to deal with never being able to play the game competitively again. There's nothing wrong ultimately with this direction, it is simply a matter of preference, like I stated, and according to my preference, I much rather enjoy not having my hand held with each enemy model being primarily a bright green light bulb in a sea of simple one-color textures. I find that there is a very important skill to the game taken out of the experience with this method. Arenas all come down to who gets the most kills or frags, or simply who gets the required frags for the match. Fragging the opponent is a matter of spotting them, and then how good your reflexes are and your aim to take them down. With force player models, bright models, and whatnot, the first aspect is taken away completely from my experience. Spotting the enemy is really easy at this point. The second aspect, shooting the player down, is the twitch nature of the game and the reasoning behind many supporting such a gameplay, that being reflex-only gameplay. But I beg to differ. From my experience again, my reflexes were much less on the edge when I was using visual aids than they were before. Before I had to spot the enemy out myself, and that added to my reaction and reflex time, meaning I needed to be even faster to respond, adding, I would say, even more skill to the equation and an even faster twitch gameplay experience. Each to their own, but in the many times I tried those visual aids, I felt like I was doing half the work I was before, and to be honest, I kinda felt bored as well, which is hardly a good thing for such a fast-paced and hectic game. But like I said, each to their own, and as per my own, Quake Champions delivers on exactly what I want, a level playing field visually for all, along with the chance to be immersed in the world I grew up loving, which is again, in all honesty, a very important aspect to me. Otherwise, might as well be playing any other game out there that is a Quake 3 clone, since textures, character designs and world building is not an issue for those using visual aids really. There are games out there to cater to this style already, like Reflex, proving also, for those that want this kind of gameplay, there are other options. And this brings me to my final point. This may yet be my only option to finally enjoy Quake like intended after almost 2 whole decades. And if people want to disagree with the like intended notion, if graphics and world building were not important, id Software would not have even bothered with making a new engine and spending so much time on all those, for the time, revolutionary designs and graphics. There were things that also made it popular, since clearly large audiences like to be visually pleased, and I do not frown upon this at all. But whatever, even if intents were other, let's just say it is at the very least the way I and people like me intended to play Quake, and couldn't for many years. There are no other options for such a player as me out there. Where can I experience all of the following? The Quake worlds, Quake character designs, nightmare and or sci-fi designs, advanced visuals and gameplay mechanics of Quake, like I can with Quake Champions. I can't find that experience elsewhere. I mention this because there are notions that dislike elements to Quake Champions out there, but they have other options, especially since most of those notions throw graphics and design down the shitter, which means they can play any old Quake 3 clone, if not Quake 3 itself. The small player base of said titles, however, is really a reflection of the smaller interest for that direction period, which would also cause Champions to fail, shall it try to implement such ideas, which include less visual details, bright models and other things of the sort. As I said, this is the only title giving me and this side of the line all we ever wanted. Finally, after 18 years, making it overall far superior to my experience with Quake 3, and believe me, I love that game to death, despite being in disagreement with so many directions the largest remaining portion of the community went into. Add to this all the previous stated points that I went over, which I find much more enjoyment and better design in each and every single one of them, all except game mode quantity of course, which I really hope is fixed with a better fleshed out custom game mode. And Quake Champions really is every bit as good as I had ever hoped it would be, and a far better version to Quake 3 and Quake Live than I could ever ask for. Each aspect brings a much needed freshness to the game and makes it more intriguing as well as fun. In certain areas it also makes it more accessible, whilst leaving the skill cap to be still quite high. Furthermore, the direction looks like something that can also appeal to a larger modern audience, and this is always a good thing and something which Quake 3 or Quake Live simply cannot do at all. For starters, this is important to the longevity of the game and for the support it needs. After that, it makes everything a lot more fun the more people you can share it with. The more the merrier, say. And this is never a bad thing the way they are going about it, and on the contrary, we also allow for proper matchmaking that can divide newcomers from skilled players much easier, allowing each to play among their own target group for the majority of the time at least, so that newcomers can have a chance to actually learn as well as enjoy the game. The beta at the moment still has issues to fix, for sure, matchmaking being one of them as I just mentioned, network code, game modes, and even some simple features like player profiles, and even simpler than that, actual chat between players. I don't understand why that's not even there yet actually. It has a ways to go before it is complete, yet even as it stands, it is still a much better game than Quake 3 ever was, and finally managed to push the franchise further ahead and improve on a formula that, let's admit, was on the one hand dated and on the other considered perfect that it simply could not be improved. But it can. It simply comes down to having an open mind to see how such changes can improve a player's experience and also the fun factor, which is very important, whilst keeping all at the same time the title very much competitive. End of the day, I highly recommend this game to any and all and every single first-person shooter player out there. And this is a perfect time as any for many people to see what the fuss was about for so many years with Quake. Well, for some people it might feel a little early being in the beta, and this might get in their way of properly enjoying it, in which case it might be better to wait a little until it is complete before jumping in on it. If you know you're such a person, have some patience instead. Keep your eye open for the progress of the game, with chance of dropping by to enjoy it come a more competitive and complete version of it. The rest? What are you waiting for? It's already in open beta. Jump on and give it a whirl. If you can experience the game with friends and other newcomers alone, even better. Custom games are working, and creating private games is as easy as 1, 2, 3. Hop on together with some friends and have some fun fragging each other. End of the day, like I said, this is all a matter of opinion. As per my opinion, I highly recommend Quake Champions. But we are all entitled to our own opinions, and I am curious, what is your experience with Quake Champions so far, and how do you feel it compares to Quake 3 or Quake Live? Leave a comment below with your opinions, and if you like this video, don't forget to hit that thumbs up, and hey, subscribe too, why not? It really helps me with making more content for YouTube. As always, this was Hazard Reborn, and I'll see you next time, right here on the digital creative front.